So I want to talk a little bit about loneliness again. I already addressed what I did about loneliness based on any love addict or love avoidant patterns that I may have manifested in the past in previous videos and writing. But I want to talk about loneliness now that comes from a place of loss, because we can feel lonely based on something we know we deserve, which is valid, or lonely based on something we imagine. And if we have built up a fantasy in our mind and we keep finding ourselves alone and feeling lonely when we're alone as opposed to enjoying being alone, then that's a whole other type of loneliness feeling, something that you can manage in self-care and self-awareness, and learning the different types of love, which I will go into in more depth in the future. But I want to talk about grief right now, because the greatest loneliness I think that I have ever felt, which I never really let myself acknowledge, because sometimes when you're going through a lot or you're in survival mode yourself, then you push things down. And it's not something I've talked about in my videos a lot, because as you know, I tend to get a little weepy when I get too vulnerable. I don't know if it's too vulnerable. But anyway, there is no greater hell that I've known than being separated from my son. He's my only child. And he's about to leave for Japan. He's in the Navy, and I don't know when I'll see him again. So I'm waiting for him. And I went to bed with Rumi last night, and I was reading, and I read the story of the sheik who plays with children. When a man comes to him and asks him about marriage and marriage advice, and the sheik tells him about 3 different women, and the third woman, he says, by her first husband she had a child, and all her love goes into that child. She will have no connection with you. Now watch out, back away, I'm going to turn this rascal around, because he's riding a horse, a little, like a stick horse, playing with kids. I thought that was cute. But I was surprised that that's the one thing that I read out of Rumi's last night, and I just kind of fell open into that. And I think that when you have experienced some kind of a loss, and death, of course, being the most extreme of those, and I am in no way wanting to belittle or demean the gravity of death, especially of a child, because I can't fathom it at all. But I can tell you that when you're separated from your child and you long to be with them every day, but the decisions in your life you're making are so that child can have a better life, even if that means that you aren't part of it for a while, for whatever reason. I haven't experienced anything more difficult. And I don't know if I could ever express to my son, here I go, how every single decision I ever made was because of him. And my choice of being alone, I had a partner for 4 years, and we helped each other get on our feet. And I have a deep love for him still, but we knew what it was when it began, and we had the healthiest part of our relationship, accepting what we were and what we weren't, so we can be happy for one another if we date or commit to other people now, and remove ourselves from one another's lives as it's appropriate, like mature adults, but still knowing that we will always have a deep bond and a friendship because we helped one another. And other than that, because I needed help, I was flailing, and you don't know what it's like to really lose something until you lose any kind of contact with a child. I can't even imagine losing a child to death. And now my son is in the Navy, and he's going to go to Japan, and I'm waiting for him to come over, so I'm going to spend the day with him. And I would love for him to do a video with me, but I don't know if I can talk him into it. But that kind of loneliness can't be filled. And one of the reasons I think I got into a relationship when I was first separated from my son, because of financial circumstances more than anything else, wasn't anybody's fault other than the economy. And I made hard choices so that he could be cared for by his father, who was much more stable than I was financially at the time. And like a real man, he stepped up and took care of our son when I couldn't. And there was an emptiness. And when my former partner came along, he helped fill that void to some degree. But I knew all along, and there was an awareness that I had to acknowledge, and I would vocalize it with my partner as well, that there's an emptiness I have because I can't see my son. I saw him maybe once every 4 to 6 months for years because I lost a vehicle. Had no way to see him because he was in a different town, because I had moved to try to find work. And you have to really be honest with yourself if you've lost something and you're grieving. Because I never really allowed myself to grieve that entire experience until now, because I'm faced with it again to some degree. My son is married and he has a beautiful wife who takes good care of him and doesn't put up with his crap, which is exactly what I would want for him, because he can be a butthead. But I will do and sacrifice whatever I have to for the sake of my son. And I don't know if he'll ever know how much I did. I don't need him to. But just know when you're feeling some kind of loss or grief, I think of it as like when a child has a pet and it dies, and the first instinct as a parent is to buy them another pet, and they look at you like, but I want this one. I want the one that died. And it's kind of the same when you grow up. If you try to fill that void right away, you're doing it because their pain is making you uncomfortable. You need to let them feel the pain. You need to let them learn how to grieve and be allowed to grieve so that when they grow up, they don't try to use other humans to fill a void that the loss of one human has made. Whether it's through a breakup, a divorce, your child leaving the nest, even if it's wonderful and good and fulfilling for them, you have to acknowledge the pain and the grief that you go through too. And if you don't process that, then you use other humans and different types of love to try to fill that void, and it doesn't work. It isn't going to work until you grieve and acknowledge the pain. So that is the most important thing I think I can tell you about loneliness when you're grieving. Be honest with yourself so that you can be honest with other people that come into your life. And I'm dating and I'm attracting wonderful, mature men that are not projects, that have their own children and can relate to some degree and can give space when it's needed and add comfort when it's needed. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I am present, which is also huge progress. But right now, focusing on the process of grief and is what's most important. So if that's why you're feeling lonely, it's valid. And let yourself feel lonely. Reach out to friends and other people, even me if you need to, so that you can just feel heard. Because I'm not going to be able to tell you anything that's going to make you feel better. And nobody could for me either. But I have other friends that are going through the same thing right now. And just us Facebook messaging and stuff has helped. Just sharing what we're going through in the moment. Knowing that other people feel the same way. And also knowing that any kind of romantic love is not going to fulfill or fill this void. And no kind of love is going to trade or compare to the kind of love you have for your child. And I'm speaking as a mother, and I'm not in any way trying to negate the love fathers have for their children, because it is a very, very important, wonderful kind of love. I just can't speak for it because I'm a girl. But I have to just close with, there's a young man who's a bit of a yogi who we were having an existential type conversation one evening, and he said something so beautiful coming from a young man who doesn't have a family of his own yet. But he said that we were talking about letting go, and he said something to the effect of he can't imagine what it's like for women, because women, especially mothers, have a concept and have to feel it on a visceral level, their actual physical bodies start learning what the possibility of having to let go of something is the moment they find out that they're pregnant. And he was right. And it was so nice to have that reality honored by a young man who doesn't even have any kids of his own yet. And those are the kind of people I attract in my life. So I'm in a really good place and I have a lot of support, so I don't really feel lonely. But when I miss my son, and there's a space for him that nobody's ever going to fill, and that has to be acknowledged as a reality, and you can't expect another human being to do it because they just won't. So notice the grief, feel it, acknowledge the fact that you're going through a process of letting go of something. And it's painful and it's excruciating, and no amount of pain is more severe than someone else's, because if it's the worst pain you've ever felt, it's yours. Own that. And I know I ran a little long, but this is a really important topic, I think, because we tend to distract ourselves from pain, and I think it's important we feel it so that we don't put that pain or an expectation of relief from it on another human through sex or relationships or through a substance like alcohol to avoid it, or prescription drugs or non-prescription drugs or anything. All of these may have a place in life, but on a healthy balance, not to avoid or detach, but to bond or become our deepest selves. So I hope this helped, and I'm sorry if I got long-winded, but I just wanted to talk more about loneliness. So let yourself grieve, and thanks for watching.